Back in 1976, Guesthouses was formed by 4 ladies. The Queen of England was visiting Charlottesville for the bicentennial. There weren't very many hotels or motels or inns back then, so there needed to be more places for people to stay. So that's where they started calling some friends, figuring out who would share a room. Then eventually they realized it was not enough work for all 4 of them. Sally Rieger eventually took it over. Then one of the hosts at the time purchased Guesthouses, and she owned it for 20 years. Joyce Kaswandik purchased it. Joyce had it for nearly 10 years, and then it led to me.
I think it was a whim. We had one of the 4 of us, who's not with us anymore, had this brainstorm that there would not be enough places for the people to stay who were coming to Charlottesville for the bicentennial. And it just grew, just like Topsy.
Joyce Karen, the woman whose idea Guesthouses was, called Betty and talked to Betty about it. And Betty called me, and Sally was her next door neighbor, was Betty's next door neighbor. And the idea that we should perhaps try to get these rooms together and these people together and form a guest house business was born.
People had just started going to Europe and staying in private homes. And so they were comfortable with that. So most of our first guests were well-traveled people who knew what they were getting into and were surprised at the quality of our places.
It actually is probably the oldest reservation service in the country, at least the first on the East Coast.
There have been bed and breakfast places all over Europe for years and years. And as far as our paving it, perhaps in this area, yes.
I was in Charleston, South Carolina, working in the hospitality industry. I got a new position up here. So the very first person that I called was Mary Hill Caperton. I got to know a little bit about her and her family and her business. So I started knocking on her door, and she would always give me the, oh, it's not big enough for 2 people, oh, I'm not selling, oh, my daughter-in-law is taking over the business. And her daughter-in-law called me and said, are you still interested in buying guest houses? And I said, yes. And she said, my mother-in-law doesn't know it yet, but I'm taking a job elsewhere, and so I believe it's going to be for sale. And within months, I became the owner of Guesthouses, so it only took 10 years.
With the modern system of computers, which we also didn't have, we had to write out these cards, and things would be scratched out on them, and sometimes things would get a little confused, and what kind of a bedroom was that? What did you say that was?
Let's face it, the world has changed since 1976.
Oh, we all visited all the homes. So we knew what we were talking about when somebody would call. We weren't just reading them a description, which is what they're doing on the computer. We'd been there, so we knew.
With the computer, you can be accurate, you can make your changes, you can be fast about your responses, you can make sure that everything is just so.
Actually, go through a catalog and say, I like this one.
I think it was Sally's son created a computer program, and gosh, that had to have been 30 years ago, that did this reservation system. Not many people were educated in how to use a computer effectively, much less design a computer program.
Oh, I don't think it's changed, not the core values, because we've had such wonderful owners. I mean, each person that's bought it has done such a good job, has just improved it, as far as having new ideas and that sort of thing. No, I think it has all of its values, even perhaps a few more.
I knew that I was ready to sell the business, and December 2015, I went to a chamber event, a women's group event, but I'd been determined that evening I was going to make my first real announcement that I'm going to sell my business in 2016.
After I sold it to Mary Hill Caperton, then she sold it to Joyce, and Joyce has now sold it to Rachel. And I think the type of person that wants to buy this business is someone who's very caring and very interested in service and hospitality. So I think we've been very fortunate with our owners.
Well, Rachel is just lovely and enthusiastic, and I think that she has, with her business acumen, which none of us had when we started, I think all the things that she's learned in school, plus her natural charm that she has, I think she'll do very well.
I mean, what stood out was really the fact that they got it started. I'm still very impressed. Like 40 years ago, they thought of this. It hadn't really been done before, especially around here.
We would just like to know that it's keeping
That
on
it's
going.
keeping going,
Yeah.
yes. I'm just so thrilled that somebody young and vibrant and smart would be excited about this and want to keep it going with new ideas. Because, you know, it's one of those things that if you don't have someone like that, it will fail. You have to have someone with a lot of enthusiasm and new ideas.
Guesthouses really strives to talk to the guests and have these great relationships with the owners where we can connect people that have a wonderful time.